Why do some students learn faster than others? Why can stress destroy memory? Why do certain teaching methods permanently change the brain, while others fail completely? These are the kinds of questions explored inside an educational psychology internship. This isn't just about schools or classrooms. It's about understanding how humans learn, how memory works, how motivation develops, and how psychology can transform education itself. Educational psychology sits at the intersection of brain neuroscience, books learning science, busts and silhouette human behavior, and direct hit cognitive performance. And during an internship, students don't just study theories. They observe real learners, real struggles, and real psychological patterns hidden inside the education system. Today, we're diving deep into heavy checkmark what educational psychology interns actually do. Heavy checkmark the science behind learning. Heavy checkmark internship structure and career paths. Heavy checkmark fascinating cognitive research. Heavy checkmark emotional and intellectual challenges. Heavy checkmark and why this field may shape the future of human intelligence itself. Educational psychology studies how people learn, think, remember, and develop intellectually. It explores questions like, why do students forget information? How does attention affect learning? Why does anxiety reduce academic performance? How do motivation and rewards influence behavior? What learning methods actually improve memory retention? Educational psychologists analyze the psychological processes behind education itself. This includes heavy checkmark cognition, heavy checkmark motivation, heavy checkmark memory, heavy checkmark intelligence, heavy checkmark emotional development, heavy checkmark classroom behavior, heavy checkmark and learning disabilities. And here's something fascinating. Modern neuroscience shows that learning physically changes the brain through neuroplasticity. Every time you learn something deeply, neurons form stronger connections. In other words, education literally rewires the brain. Let's break down the core specifications of an educational psychology internship. Duration, 6 months to 1 year. Hours, 800 to 2,000 supervised hours. Supervision, licensed educational psychologists, school psychologists, or academic researchers. Training style, observation, assisted interventions, independent assessment, and planning. Common internship settings: schools, universities, child development centers, learning disability clinics, special education programs, educational research institutes, NGOs, focused on education. Interns may work with gifted students with ADHD, autism spectrum learners, children with dyslexia, students facing anxiety or academic stress, children with behavioral difficulties. This internship combines heavy checkmark psychology, heavy checkmark neuroscience, heavy checkmark education, heavy checkmark behavioral analysis, heavy checkmark and developmental science. And unlike traditional teaching, educational psychology focuses on how learning happens internally. Educational psychology interns study some of the most powerful theories in cognitive science. Small Blue Diamond Piaget's cognitive development theory explains how children think differently at different ages. Small Blue Diamond Vygotsky's social learning theory shows how social interaction shapes intelligence. Small Blue Diamond behaviorism studies reinforcement, punishment, and conditioning in learning. Small Blue Diamond information processing theory compares the brain to a computer processing information. Small Blue Diamond multiple intelligences theory suggests intelligence is not one-dimensional. Small Blue Diamond metacognition, the science of thinking about thinking. And here's where things become intellectually addictive. Educational psychologists begin to see hidden learning patterns everywhere. For example, a child struggling academically may not lack intelligence at all. The real issue might be anxiety, attention, overload, sleep deprivation, trauma, poor learning methods, or low self-efficacy. Sometimes the problem isn't the student, it's the learning environment itself. Educational psychology internships are surprisingly hands-on. Interns may heavy checkmark observe classroom behavior, heavy checkmark conduct learning assessments, heavy checkmark assist students with learning difficulties, heavy checkmark analyze academic performance patterns, heavy checkmark help create intervention check marks study attention and motivation. Heavy check mark participate in behavioral support programs. Heavy check mark work with parents and teachers. Some internships even involve IQ testing, cognitive assessments, special education planning, educational counseling, behavioral modification strategies. One of the most fascinating parts of the internship is discovering how differently human minds process information. Some students learn visually, others learn socially, others through repetition, others through emotional engagement. Educational psychology reveals that intelligence is far more complex than exam scores. Educational psychology is now deeply connected to neuroscience. Researchers study how memory forms, attention shifts, stress affects cognition, dopamine influences motivation, sleep impacting learning consolidation. For example, studies show chronic stress can weaken the hippocampus, the brain region responsible for memory formation. That's why emotionally